Random man at my door. I'm writing these lines during the very last day of October in the year 2022. This happened to me about 15 years ago. I was 21 years old and I was living in my very first apartment. It was a small bachelor apartment in a rather sketchy area. I grew up in a town that was known to be rough and really tough. I knew how to handle myself and I learned at a young age to keep my head down and not to go looking for trouble. My apartment building was behind a bar. A lot of the customers of the bar would stand outside to smoke. When they stood outside to smoke, they would be looking at my apartment. Most of the people who were out smoking kept to themselves. A few would nod and say hello if I passed by. Never any issues until one evening. One evening, I came home from work. I passed the bar and I saw this extremely tall man outside smoking. As I passed by, he stared at me. I gave him a slight nod, but he did not acknowledge me. He continued to stare. It made me uncomfortable, but I did not think much of it. About an hour later, I hear a knock on my door. It was rather odd because you have to buzz people into the building. The building only had 8 units and I did not really know any of the neighbors. I froze because I really did not want to talk to anyone, but the knocking continued. I finally decided to shout out,
"Who is it?"
but there was no response. I shouted again,
"Who is it?"
and the voice replied and said,
"It's Tom."
I didn't know anyone named Tom, so I shouted back,
"I don't know anyone named Tom. You must have the wrong apartment."
and to that the voice replied,
"You may not know me, but I know you. Open up so we can talk."
I went over the peephole and it was the tall dude from the bar. And I loudly said,
"Fuck off, or I'm calling the cops."
and I heard his footsteps walk away, and I heard the building open door. And then it closed. He was gone, or so I thought. A few minutes later, I peeked out the window and he was standing in the parking lot. He seemed to be talking to himself. At this point, I'm freaking out. I call my landlord, who lived in the building next to me. He told me to call the police and that in the meantime, he and his brother would come to check things out. I call the police and I tell them what's going on. They said a car is on the way. Meanwhile, my landlord and his brother make their way to the parking lot. I watch out of my window and I see them approach the tall dude. The tall dude takes one look at them and bolts. He runs. My landlord and his brother tried to chase him, but the tall dude got away. About 5 minutes later, the police officer arrives. I give my version of the events and I also give a description of the man. To that, the officer stares at me and then he says,
Rydym wedi derbyn adroddiadau o ddyn sy'n edrych fel na sydd wedi bod yn ymosod ar y fenywod yn rhywiol. Roedd yn gall iawn na nes ti agor y drws. We've had reports of a man matching that description who has been sexually assaulting women. It was very smart that you didn't open the door.
A few days later, I get a call from the officer. He told me part of their investigation was talking to the owner of the bar. The owner called the police when tall dude reappeared after a few days, and the police responded and arrested him. So yeah, tall creepy dude from the bar. It was close call, definitely a close call, and I sincerely hope I never see you again.